For inside of Iran, we were talking about how the government will probably be secular and not have any anti-Islamic positioning beyond just not allowing Islam inside the government, and also beyond not allowing government funds to be used for building mosques or Islamic teaching, and people will still be allowed to build their mosques if they use their own private money, right? So it's not going to be like it's not like the hijab is going to be banned. It's not like going to be that people can't read their Quran. People will be free to read the Quran. People would be free to pray. People would be free to probably even advertise Islam, like go out and advertise Islam, but just without government money, right? So, but that's from the government's perspective. But from the people's perspective, we were wondering if there's going to be a shame culture against Muslims. Like we're going to have a calling out, like whether it's going to be difficult for you to, I don't know, maybe get a job if you are a religious Muslim, right? Whether if people are going to not hire you if they notice that you're not eating during Ramadan, right? Whether if somebody says, I don't know, Ya Ali or Ya Hussein, if somebody's going to swear at you to tell you to shut the fuck up, if you all of a sudden say something Islamic, whether women would
Realistically,
hit.
you're gonna have that, but you're gonna have that, and you're probably gonna have it for a while, especially right after in the first few months.
Right, and I think that we shouldn't be like. I don't think that needs to be called out as something bad because I think I understand it, right? I mean, if people understand the trauma the Iranian people had to deal with for the past 47 years, I don't think that people from outside saying like going, that's bad, you shouldn't be doing that. I think that would not be welcome. I think the level after, especially the massacre of early January, some of that, as Sapir is saying, it could be expected and not even blameworthy, in my opinion.
It's not something you should blame on. It's something that we can say, "Oh, okay, it's not ideal," but it's also like, what do you expect? Like, of course, there's
Right.
gonna be something.
Yes, but it's also legal. I think. I think it's like we cannot ban this. You cannot, like the best you could expect is for the government not to ban Islam. Okay, but if you're not banning Islam, you can't ban hating Islam, right? You could suggest people like, oh, be nicer to Muslims. You could do that, okay, but you can't make it illegal for people to go out and say like, yeah, Allah Akbar, shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up with your Allah Akbar. Okay, you could
What I'm
basically
worried
call it out
about,
as like, hey, but I'm just saying, like you could suggest to people like, oh, people be nicer, and you could make that suggestion, but the government can't come and get involved and tell you to be respectful to Muslims. But go on, Step here. What are you gonna say?
what I'm worried about is that we're gonna see not exactly massacres, but there will be chasing and like physical harming and some killing of Muslims. That's what I'm afraid is going to happen, and I feel like it's going to happen in a
I
very
think
certain scale.
I think that's going to happen to regime officials, not just average Muslims. I think average Muslims, I don't think so. Mullahs, maybe. Okay, so
Mm.
mullah is not an average Muslim, and I'm not. By the way, I'm not endorsing this, right? But
No,
I'm
we're just
thinking,
trying to be realistic.
yes, I'm thinking that if you were or maintain continue to be a mullah, your safety would be at risk. But if you were an average Muslim, you're not going to be hunted down just for being a Muslim. Okay, but it is possible. One thing that would reduce that risk is Prince Reza Pahlavi coming out and saying, calling it out, and saying like this shouldn't happen. And given the amount of respect he has, that would probably be that would have a huge impact in limiting that level of violence. One thing that would limit that violence is a swift, like a very, extreme fast justice for like again, again against the people who have been part of the regime. Because if the people think like, okay, the punishment is not coming fast enough and harsh enough, then they might get frustrated enough to try to maybe basically settle some scores themselves. So it's very important for for the next government to be able to deliver justice to Iranian people fast. However, I do think that during the revolution phase, before the transitional period comes into effect, it is fair for the Iranian people. Like, I wouldn't call it settling score. I think that if you're still in the revolution period, taking out regime forces is basically self-defense, right? It only becomes it only I think the only time you should be quitting taking out regime forces is once we're officially have moved into the transitional government phase. But as long as we're still in the revolution phase, I think regime forces are fair game, in my opinion, right? But again, those are regime forces. We're talking about Muslims and Islam, right? And even if we want to, like, I do understand that some Muslims would be unfairly targeted, maybe. I don't think it's going to be as big as some people are worried about, but it will happen and it will get reported on, and people will exaggerate how common that has become. Even if you get one, like a few reports, it will get a lot of attention and a lot of headlines covering it. However, I do want people to remind people that it's nothing compared to what non-Muslims had to experience under the Islamic Republic. Like, it's not even going to be close.
It's
Uh,
also
so
important to
there's that.
mention that no matter what happens, no matter even if like it just like right now we already see like it's actually Mossad doing all of this and it's not the actually the Iranian people. Just no matter what, you're gonna have people with interest demonizing all of this, like the entire change, the entire like we always gonna have those people, and it's always gonna
Mm,
be circulating. The
right.
like we can only
So
do what we can.
So, for the past 2 decades, one thing that we hear inside Iran is that hiç Irani Musalman neist va hiç Musalmani Irani neist. Okay, this is a common thing that people say, which is no Iranian is Muslim and no Muslim is Iranian. So basically, this belief not everybody believes this in Iran, but the idea is that if you're a Muslim, then you're not an Iranian. Right? You can't be both at the same time, right? And many people have continue to have that belief, and the massacre of early January has convinced more people that that's true. Like, I expect once the Islamic Republic is gone, if you're a Muslim, if you're wearing a job, if you're praying, and if somebody notices, you could expect to somebody to tell you, like, still, like, are you, like, how, even after that massacre, you're still a Muslim? Like, how anti-Iranian can you be that you, after the massacre, like, especially given that after the massacre, so many older people in Iran, that their children or their grandchildren never expected them to say something like this, they came out and said they're never going to pray again, right? They're never going to pray again. So, in response to the massacre of the Islamic Republic, there is now so many stories from the older generation, which is the last one to leave Islam, coming out and saying, "Okay, that's it. I'm not a Muslim. I'm not going to. I don't want to do anything with Islam anymore." Right? And people, even people from older generations, swearing against the holiest. So they're expecting that if you're a Muslim, people are like, "What the hell is wrong with you? How could you still be Muslim after what just happened?" Right? And the only thing that, so I had a debate with somebody regarding this. The only thing that we could mention to for people to be more tolerant is remind them the Muslims who were participating in the revolution, especially this woman named Fatima Sepehri, which Iranians really celebrate as part of the revolution, who's being very much mistreated by the Islamic Republic, and she's in prison and extremely mistreated. And reminding people, and she wears the full chador, reminding people that she's on our side and she's part of the revolution, is the only way that some people get convinced that, okay, maybe, like, maybe not all Muslims. Okay, again, guys, I'm just saying that, like, that, like, here's how we know Islam is in a very, very bad situation right now in Iran, given that even everybody, when they asking about Islam in Iran, they ask about what's going to happen to Muslims after the Islamic Republic, right? I mean, you wouldn't ask that in a country where it's supposed to be a Muslim majority, right? Like, oh my god, what about Muslims? Like, everybody knows how anti-Islamic Iran has turned. The fact that they're worried about Muslims shows how anti-Islamic Iran has become. Where people are like, okay, what are we going to do to protect the Muslims after the Islamic Republic? So this is an admission regarding the mass exodus out of Islam from the Iranian people. So that's one conversation that we were having. I think I've spoken for too long, so I'm gonna there's two other conversations that I could have with regards to the free speech and in Iran, and whether the discussion regarding whether it should be legal or illegal according to the Iranian peoples to insult stuff like the book, the Shahnameh, or national symbols, or Deraf Shikaviani, or all of the other Zoroastrian symbols that now Iranian people understand as to be their national symbols, whether Iranian people think that they should be legal or illegal. That's one conversation I want to have with you guys if you're interested. And another conversation that I could have is regarding the really heated conversations that we have. Also, regarding the continuation of the anti-Islamic war beyond Iran's borders, right? So I'm actually a major advocate for this, that Iran is just the first step, right? And I know Goldie disagrees with me on this. I think Iranians, because Goldie says like we should be like keeping it in Iran, right? I think that Iran should be the first step when it comes to the Islamic liberation of the entire region and eventually the rest of the world, right? And I think that Iran could be the base of operations for anti-Islamic activities. So if you want to talk about that, I could also touch on that once we go through some people. Okay. All right. Okay, let's go to the next person. Alex,
Armin,
you
down in
yeah,
oh,
go
go
on.
ahead.
No, I just wanted Alex to close his mic because we're getting a lot of background noise. If
So
it's
if you
possible.
can
Thank
check
you,
the
Alex.
chat,
Yeah.
please. I have
Yeah.
pasted a question that someone has privately asked down in chat, and then we have Denny.
All right, let me copy and paste this because I'm not allowed to open this chat. You told me, BT, so I'm gonna copy it from here and then maybe post it on here. Here, one second. All right, could you clarify the difference between Saltanat Talab and Padishahi? Pahlavi dynasty was constitutional monarchy anyways. Are they talking about the changes that Muhammad Reza Shah made to the constitution? I do not understand what people are fighting over. Okay, so technically, they both are supposed to mean the same thing, right? So Padishahi means monarchy in Persian, Sultanate means monarchy in Arabic, right? However, the word Sultanate refers to Solte, which is like is like too aggressive. It's like dominant. It's like something that is supposed to. It sounds tyrannical, right? The word Padishahi, which is a Persian word, is a lot more friendly, you know what I mean, than the word Sultanate, right? So even though they technically mean the same thing, but one is in Arabic, the other one is in Persian, given how monarchists refer to themselves as Padishah Khan and anti monarchists refer to the monarchists as Saltanat Talab, it has now become common for us to recognize who is against us based on how they refer to the monarchists. So technically, they mean the same thing, but they used by different groups of people. So I don't know if that answers that. I don't know if that answers the question for the first part of the question. I don't know who asked it. Like, are they satisfied with this, or do they have? Is it still clear this part or not? So
Yes, they are satisfied.
okay. So that's the first part. Let me read the second part. Pahlavi dynasty was constitutional monarchy, anyways. Are they talking about the changes that Muhammad Reza Shah made? No, they consider both Muhammad Reza Shah to be Sultanate and what's coming by Prince Reza Pahlavi to also be Sultanate. I do not understand what people are fighting over. So the wording is they're not fighting over Padishahi versus Sultanate. Okay, they're fighting over wanting monarchy or not wanting monarchy, like, so the, they're anti-monarchist. So it's not that they're fighting over the wording. It's just that the wording shows that they are against us. By the way, I just want to make it clear, I'm not a monarchist. Okay, when I say against us, because I consider anti-monarchists to be our enemy, even though I'm not a monarchist myself, right? Because I like the monarchists, I defend the monarchists, I consider the monarchists to be under, are out. So the main difference maker for me is not whether you're a monarchist or not a monarchist. The main difference maker is whether you support Prince Reza Pahlavi's leadership, his team, and the four principles. Okay, so if you accept Prince Reza Pahlavi as the leader and his team and his transitional plan and the four principles by Prince Reza Pahlavi, which is the border integrity, democracy, secularism, and equal individual rights before the law. These are the four principles. If you agree with this, then you're on our side, whether you're a monarchist or not, right? But anti-monarchists, even though I'm not a monarchist, anti-monarchists are against everything against Pahlavi and his team, right? So I defend. So as a non-monarchist myself, I see I'm on the same side of the monarchists in this revolution with the leadership of Princess of Pahlavi, and I consider anti-monarchists to be the enemy, not because I'm a monarchist, but because the anti-monarchists are also the enemy of Princess of Pahlavi. So that's how, and also, and the enemy of the Iranian people and Iran as a whole. So that's the explanation. All right.
Thank you, Armin. So next we have Danny.
Yeah.
First, I just wanted to remind you about what Goldie said at the end of the stream that you said you'd tell us about, but that's your update to share.
Oh, so
Like
Goldie
right
said
before
something
you,
at the end of.
yeah,
Yeah.
right before you joined the
Okay.
discussion group.
Okay, tell me, what did she say?
She said that she might join like this week, I think. I
Yes,
didn't.
guys, Goldie might join us. Goldie might join this discussion group this week. Okay, so I need you guys to be very good, be at your best behavior. I'm looking at you, Steph and Alex.
Ah, la la la
Um,
la.
okay, okay. I know you guys open your mics at really in the middle of conversations. So just want to. Oh, and Daniel as well. Is he here? Okay. Okay. So,
Sorry,
I
guys,
I'll
didn't
try to be
promise,
quiet.
really.
yes. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So,
Otherwise,
guys, please don't embarrass me.
Next on the
I
list we
wanted
have.
to. Sorry, I
Go
wanted
ahead.
to keep asking about something. So about Muslims in Iran. So to me, as an atheist, there's a distinction between does belief in this religion cause good things, and does this religion describe things that are actually true about the real world. So to play some devil's advocate on behalf of Muslims in Iran, maybe they can claim that they don't take their religion that seriously and they don't believe that Khomeinism is the right interpretation of Islam, and they just want to go on without bothering anybody with some extremely benign interpretation. I'm also extremely against Islam, but I have some sympathy for an argument along those lines, and my main concern is that propagating Islam at all guarantees that people will interpret it in a more radical way just by reading the texts.
Okay. So, this is the argument that I have with Muslims inside Iran that works almost every time. And they get convinced by this when I tell them this. I'm not talking about the pro Islamic Republic Muslims, I'm talking about the anti Islamic Republic Muslims in Iran. When I tell them this, they become extremely tolerant of my anti-Islamic rhetoric, right? They not only they accept it, they become really good friends with me, and they're like, okay, be- they were like, okay, this is good. This is what I like as well. So- And I actually managed to convince Mehdi Nasiri, who is one of the most important religious Muslims, who used to be the main propagandist for Khamenei himself. Okay, and I just had a show with him, and I did told him all of this, and he was convinced by them. And like, he said, I have no problem if this is being if what you're doing represents, if all anti-Islam activists are like you, I have no problem with anti-Islam activists, because his position was like, you guys could basically leave Islam, but why do you have to attack Islam? But now he's like, okay, fair, attack Islam all you want. Okay, so my point is to them that what I want for Muslims after the Islamic Republic is not just the ability to be Muslim. Okay. I am a free speech advocate, and I think that they should have the freedom to invite people to Islam. They should have that freedom, right? And not only that, as an Iranian citizen, they should expect safety and security from our future government, and they should be treated like every other citizen. And any other citizen, if anybody wants to come harm them or mistreat them or threaten them because they're Muslim, it is the responsibility of our state to come give them full protection. And me, as an anti as somebody who's anti-Islam but also is a free speech advocate, I expect my state to protect Muslims against harm for being Muslims, even though I'm extremely anti-Islamic. So I say, how does that sound? Do you think that's fair? They say, like, oh, yeah, that sounds great. That sounds fair. So for first, by the way, this is a trap. Okay. I get them on board that this is a good thing. Okay. So once they accept that this is a good thing, because I don't tell them what I want from my state before I tell them this, because they have to first admit that this is a good situation for them to be in, right? Say like, so secularism, there is no Islamic government, there is no mosque being there, there's no religious propaganda being spread by the government, but you get to be a Muslim, you get to teach Islam, you get to advocate Islam, you get to raise your own money, build your own mosque, whatever you want, pray, fast, whatever you want to do as a Muslim. Nobody should harm you. And you can even have your Ashura ceremonies if you want, as long as you keep the noise down and you don't get noise complaints. You could even do that, okay? And that sounds fair. Is it fair? Fair. Okay. There are many people who say, are Muslim Iranians who are against the regime. They say, like, hey, in the future of Iran, a free Iran, everybody should keep their religion into their own private house and not talk about their religion in the public sphere. And they're Muslim and they're saying this. I'm like saying, hey, look, as an anti Islamic person, I'm going further than them. They say, keep Islam into your own house. I'm saying, no, you should be able to come into the park and talk about Islam, hand out power. The Muslims who are anti-Islamic Republic, they're saying after we free Iran, we will keep Islam into our home. Me as a free speech advocate, I'm saying you should be able to be free to come out and advocate for Islam in the park and hand out pamphlets to people to bring them back to Islam. I think you should be able to do that. So, like, look, I'm actually more generous than the Muslim political activists, given that I'm anti-Islamic. So this is good, right? They're like, okay, yeah, that's really good. And then here's the trap. They're like, okay, if you are free to advocate for Islam, then do you agree that it's only fair that I get to advocate against Islam, right? And when I get to this part, they usually say yes. Okay. And especially given that I gave them all of those brownie points, all of those, privileges and rights, right? They're going to not let us pray, not let us fast. So you first come and say, you give them the good parts. You tell them that they will be even more secure. They will be even more secure under a secular Iran. Muslims will be protected even more than under the Islamic Republic. And they will be able to do all of the Islamic things that they want, whatever Islamic thing they want. So you give them all the good parts, and the only thing you ask for in return is that I should, like, if you can advocate for Islam, it's only fair for me to speak against it. So you get them, and then you're gonna get into a debate because they know that I'm also in favor of being able to insult and ridicule Islam. But that's the next discussion. I'm not gonna tell you how I get them on board with that as well, which is very challenging. But I have been successful with that with some Muslims, to get them even on board with, okay, it should be free to insult Islam. It's very challenging, but I just wanted to give you the first step on how I get them on board in being able to speak against Islam in the future of Iran. That's if you're interested, I could tell you how I go with the insulting and ridiculing as well.
I'm very interested, but I wanted to give the floor to some other people. And also, Alex had a
Uh,
quick comment about this.
I guess now it's time to
Okay.
talk.
Yeah, go
Yeah,
ahead, Alex.
Tulsi actually talked about this, and he calls this form of Islam Islamism, which is basically an extreme form of,
There is no form of Islam. Is Islam and Islamism are the same thing.
well, one is more radical than another. One is like more
No,
strict.
no, that's not true. Islam and Islamism are the same thing. There is no difference between Islam and Islam. There is a difference between a Muslim and an Islamist, okay? Because some Muslims want Islam in politics and some of them don't. But Islam as a religion is completely political to its core. It is within Islam is political from its DNA. So there is no difference between Islam and Islamism. When it comes
Yeah,
to individuals, there is a difference between a Muslim and an Islamist. But when it comes to the religion itself, there is no difference because Islam is purely political.
and I would bet you they would be unwilling to rewrite their holy book Quran to fix this part.
I mean, if you're willing to rewrite the Quran, then you're not a Muslim anymore.
Yeah, so they're not going to
If
be
you come
willing
out
to
and
do that.
say that I want to rewrite the Quran, immediately with it, like you immediately have left Islam.
Yep. I think belief in the perfection of the Quran to Islam is like a belief in Jesus being the Son of God to Christianity. It's just you can't do that.
Yeah, Danny, actually, something a point that a lot of people don't understand. A lot of people think Allah is like Jesus, and the Quran is like the Bible. It's actually the other way around. Okay, so in Islam, the equivalent to Jesus is the Quran, not Allah, and the equivalent to Allah is the Bible. But I will have another explanation regarding that one day.
Jeffrey, why don't you go ahead and chime in on this, please?
Yeah, just to elaborate again on Armin's point, it's very apt. There's a huge difference between Islam, the belief system, and all members of the Alman breed, the global community that identifies as being Muslim. Now, that being said, so people are like, well, what if you interpret things differently? Other than a very brief time period during the Mutazilite era, applying reason or it, I'm always mispronounce it, Ittihad, it was is considered a primary heretical act. If you modify or try to change the Quran prior to the ninth century or after the ninth century, it qualifies you for death in Islamic jurisprudence, right? In Sharia law, how Islam doctrinally applies its belief system. And like the idea, it's amazing you brought that up, Armin. Like some people, predominantly in the West, right, due to institutional capture of our universities being leftist only clubs and leftist bullshit, like it's like this moral equivalency. Well, Muhammad is the same as Yahshua Mashiach, and the Quran is the same as the Bible. No, they're not. No, they're not. Not doctrinally, not historically, not at all. Well, but there's no but. There's no but, right? So a couple of myths, right? Oh, there is peaceful surahs in the Quran. That must mean Islam is peaceful. First off, the translation, that's a mistranslation. That's not peace surah. Read the Meccan surahs. That's word surah, not the same as peace. Even if there were peace surahs in the Quran, because Islam doctrine, how Islam doctrinally categorizes the Quran and or applies said like surahs via the law of abrogation based on the idea of progressive revelation, meaning Muhammad, even if he existed, because there's no third party corroboratory evidence, like say, like the existence of Yahshua Mashiach via Roman, you know, like documents, was getting, he was going up to a cave and having delusions of grandeur and thought he was giving the all this like amazing wisdom with the ultimate wisdom, alleged ultimate wisdom at the end. Meaning that all of the surahs that are temporally located, meaning in time in the Quran, abrogate, replace, and nullify the ones that came before it. Why is that? Because the sword or war verses, the Medinan surahs, are temporally located later on in the Quran. So even if there were peace surahs, which there isn't, it doesn't make any difference. This is like leftists who try to sit there and do all this mental gymnastics, right? Like, oh, well, but Islam's like, they're queers for Palestine. How can you possibly be queers for Hamas? They want you all dead. I mean, outside of it's in a luxury belief because you live in the West and are not directly like going to directly suffer that racial, cultural, national, or personal masochistic belief system, right? I mean, how do you logically square that circle? Right? How do they do it? They sit there and redefine Islam in a manner that Islam itself says you cannot do. Other than the ninth century, under the Mutazilite reign, which was like disproportionately Greeks and Persians that played a role in that very brief time period where reason could even be superficially applied to the Quran. Like it's the same shit that I hear when it comes to Mandela, right? Like, there's no question the apartheid government in South Africa was shitty. Absolutely ruthless fuckers, right? They did horrible shit. And it's true, Mandela fought against the apartheid regime. That's true. That doesn't make Mandela de facto good. I mean, Mandela was an overt asset for the KGB and did despicable shit all throughout the African peninsula or the continent of Africa. Just look up Operation Mayabuye and all the terrorist attacks like the Church Street bombing and all the rest of it that disproportionately killed, I'm going somewhere with this, disproportionately killed black women and children. Well, what do you hear the left say? Oh, Mandela, he was like South Africa's, like Martin Luther King. No, not even close. That bullshit moral equivalence. Oh my God. I'm sorry, Armin. I get just as probably as angry as you do with this nonsense. I mean, doesn't it drive you ape shit when these people try to push that stuff? Well, it depends on how you interpret the Quran. The Islam says you can't do that. So, I mean, where do you go from there? I don't know. I mean, I know I kind of meander a little bit. It's just, it's that kind of intellectual dishonesty and lack of moral clarity that erodes policy that needs to be implemented so we can minimize the absolute abuse and abject horror that is visited upon any number of vulnerable populations by Islamic fundamentalist entities, whether they're the Mullah regime or terrorists or whatever. And so the reason I get upset is because that lack of moral clarity is measured in people's lives. And I don't know how the hell you don't flip out, Armin. I don't know how you do it, dude. Is it a big bag of weed or you drinking every day? I don't know what it is. I mean, you like all this shit going on in Iran, and somehow you like still. I told my wife I call you like Persian Elmo, right? Because I just want to tickle you. I just anyway. I'm gonna stop now.
Brave.
All right. No, I mean,
I
I've
think you
debated.
needed that. I think you really needed that.
Yeah, yeah, you need to get that out of your system. Yeah, I mean, I debated Muslims for more than a decade now, and I've heard the most. You won't believe the types of arguments I've heard. I've debated many mullahs, many so-called philosophers of Islamic studies. So honestly, like when you guys hear some ridiculous nonsense, it's nothing compared to what like yeah. I mean, I'm actually fascinated by them by the Islamic by the pro-Islamic arguments. And the way I don't get angry anymore is, I mean, I when I get angry is because I want to get angry because I feel like I enjoy sometimes like getting angry, so it's completely under my control when I want to get angry, and I get angry. But when I don't get angry, because it does strategically, it doesn't make sense to get angry because you're disarming somebody by calmly listening to them. I treat them like a, I don't know, like a virus that I'm studying or something. Like I don't get, like I think like a scientist who is basically treating, I think they're actually interested in the subject that they're studying. So I look at them at the subject of study and the way that they think. Instead of me getting angry with it, I feel like I'm studying something. I'm trying to understand how the pro-Islamic arguments evolve and what their strategies are. And I basically look at it as an observer. And when I'm studying it, I get less angry from it. That's the way I try to think about it.
A lot
I
of
do
us been
think
doing
we
it
should,
for years as well. So like, I don't know how about you, Armin, but at the start, because I've been getting like death threats and stuff from Muslims since I was like 12. But at the start, I would get really angry, and sometimes I would just feel despair and just go on a crash out. And we all have crash outs sometimes, but it's like with time and
yeah.
breathing and taking breaks whenever you can. And again,
I
looking for, like Armin said, to taking like a stand from the outside as an observer, that helps.
Yes, I usually get more angry with people that need to know better. Honestly, I shouldn't say this, but when somebody says I'm a Muslim, I feel like, oh, you're special. Like I kind of like feel like you're a special person, so I should be less angry with you because you're kind of like a mental handicap or something. So I treat you like I basically, if somebody is like usually on the right side of things and has good position, and they all of a sudden have a shit take, they're usually like, what the fuck? But if you're a Muslim, for example, and you have shit takes, I'm like, well, I mean, you're Muslim. Like, okay, like, okay,
I
like, why
had
should
a
I get angry?
conversation with someone that went great for 2 hours, and then started, and then like it was like so logical and nice, and then it's like on the side, yeah, but there's the black magic Jewish cult that controls the world.
By the way, guys, like one of the most one debate that I just recently had on the Persian side was like, if you want to talk about frustrating arguments, I was debating. It was recorded and we just released it on our Persian channel. I was debating somebody that came up and was defending the Islamic Republic regarding the killing, more 40,000 and more Iranian people, and he was basically trying to argue why that was justified, why every state has the right to defend itself when they're trying to topple it. And I was arguing that. So if you think, right? So, and by the way, it went very well in my favor. Like I completely destroyed him, but he was really frustrated with me. Um, but yeah, this is what I go through. imagine, imagine, imagine after experiencing the worst strategy in the history of your country, having to debate somebody who's trying to justify it, like having to debating that person for an hour straight, and yeah,
I'm sure most of us can't
tolerating
relate.
his nonsense. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't have to imagine it. We know it very well. Finally, on the list, we have Cat Lady.
Yes, finally. So actually, there is like this viral video right now of this YouTuber Bailey something. I don't know. She's like crying, and like she's has like what the situation in America is so bad right now, and she has some points, I guess. Some others that I don't agree on, whatever. But she says, "What are we going to do? What are we going to do?" and cries, and it's very viral right now. And was going through the comments, and people say, "Oh yeah, let's unite together to fight the Jews."